Let's do a quick check of the market sponsored by Flex Shares. Still looking at a mixed picture, although we are seeing some of the selling action for the Dow starting to slow down now. The Dow just off about more than 70 points there. The S&P 500 also still seeing some gains here, up about 6 points, ever so slightly in positive territory. And same story with the Nasdaq. They're also seeing gains, considering to pick up. They're up about 60 points so far, or about 0.5%. Well, Meta got hit with a huge fine today from the EU, a record $1.3 billion over the transferring of European user data to the US. Joining us now is Yahoo Finance tech reporter Dan Howley. So, Dan, you said Meta wasn't surprised at all by this fine. Why not?
Yeah, they were expecting a fine, but maybe they were surprised by the size of it. This is something that's been ongoing for years now. Basically, the issue goes all the way back to when Edward Snowden had revealed that the U.S. government was able to spy on citizens in other countries, including in Europe. They started to draft data protections for Europeans. Now we have the General Data Protection Regulation, and there's data transfer requirements for data going from Europe to the U.S. Now, those have been questioned as to whether or not they allow Europeans the kind of privacy or ability to challenge when the U.S. Surveillance groups look at European users' data. So that's been challenged, and now they're trying to come up with the new means to allow for European user data to be looked at and stored in the U.S. by U.S. companies. This really comes down to whether or not Europeans can trust the U.S. And kind of the security infrastructure to not spy on Europeans' data. And if so, then they have to provide a reason and for Europeans to go ahead and then be able to question that. And so with this new issue that's cropped up with Facebook, their Meta, they've essentially been fined this $1.3 billion, 1.2 billion euros as a result of these data transfer problems. And now the U.S. and EU are actively working to come to a new agreement when it comes to data transfer. If they do that, which is expected by the summer, then this would kind of all go away for Meta, except for the fine. They have 6 months to essentially delete all European user data that they have in the U.S. on their servers and then stop processing EU user data in the U.S. as well. Doing that would take far more than 6 months, though. And so they're hopeful that they will be able to see an agreement between the EU and U.S. and for these data transfers to continue. But they're still going to be hit by that $1.3 billion. In their prior earnings call, they had discussed how they were waiting for the decision to come down. They expected some kind of fine and some kind of ruling. But $1.3 billion, that's a hefty fine.
Indeed. I mean, so then as we look at the big picture, then what are the implications of this fine on transatlantic data flows and this pact that the EU and the US are supposed to be working on?
Yeah, look, this is something that could affect any company that does business from the US in the EU. They're going to probably transfer that data from the EU to the US for processing on their own servers. And so this really could impact all of those businesses, not just Meta. It could impact Alphabet. It could impact Microsoft. It could impact any company that does this kind of transfer. And it's not just big tech companies either. It's smaller companies as well, small, medium businesses. They may be doing the same thing. And so, the need to get this deal done between the EU and the U.S. Really is just kind of being shown in a greater light here with this fine that Meta received. And, $1.3 billion, a lot of money. But the FTC still hit them with $5 billion a few years ago because of the issues that came with Cambridge Analytica. And so they have sustained similar fines before and gone ahead no problem. And so, I think what Meta is really expecting is for the U.S. and the EU to somehow come together on this and eventually have an agreement in place where they don't have to worry about future fines. They don't have to worry about doing anything else as far as transferring of EU and data to the U.S.
Yeah, certainly need some clarity on that. That $1.3 billion has to sting, I'm sure. A big thank you for that update, Dan Howley. Thanks so much.